You'll notice this right before your path aligns. Carl Jung. There is a quality of silence that descends upon the soul before great transformation, not the empty silence of absence, but the pregnant hush of potential gathering its forces. You have felt it, perhaps without naming it, that peculiar atmospheric shift that occurs when the unconscious begins its ancient work of preparation, like a master craftsman arranging unseen tools before the moment of creation arrives. In these threshold times, your ordinary consciousness becomes a sensitive instrument, registering frequencies that have always been there but were previously drowned out by the static of routine living. The ego, that familiar narrator of your daily existence, begins to sense something stirring in the depths, a movement like the first tremor before an earthquake, or the way animals grow restless before storms that human eyes cannot yet perceive on the horizon. This is not anxiety, though the ego may mistake it for such. This is the psyche's way of announcing that a great work is about to begin, that the self, that mysterious orchestrator of your deepest purpose, has been consulting its ancient maps and preparing to guide you toward territories you have never consciously explored, but which your soul has been quietly charting all along. The restlessness comes first, settling into your bones like an old ache returning with changing weather. You find yourself unable to sink fully into familiar routines that once provided comfort and structure. The television program that used to hold your attention now feels hollow, its images sliding across your consciousness without purchase. The conversations that once engaged you begin to feel like echoes in an empty chamber. Even sleep, that reliable refuge from consciousness, becomes fitful and strange, as if your dreaming mind is busy with preparations it cannot yet share with your waking awareness. This is the ego beginning to sense that its reign as primary architect of your experience is about to be challenged, not by an enemy, but by a deeper intelligence that has been patiently waiting for the right moment to emerge. The persona, that carefully constructed mask you wear to navigate the social world, starts to feel tight around the edges, like clothing that no longer fits quite right. You catch glimpses of yourself in mirrors and feel a momentary disconnection, as if looking at someone you recognize but cannot quite place. The mundane world continues its familiar rhythms around you, but you begin to move through it like a sleepwalker awakening, still participating in the dance of daily life, but with an increasing awareness that you are dancing to music that has subtly changed keys. Your hands perform their accustomed tasks, while your attention drifts toward something unnamed, something approaching from just beyond the edge of conscious perception. In quiet moments, those spaces between activities when the mind is neither fully engaged nor completely at rest, you feel it most clearly, an expectancy that has no object, a waiting without knowing what is being awaited. It is as if some part of you, some deeper knowing that exists beneath the reach of rational thought, has received word that something significant is approaching and has begun making preparations that your conscious mind can only sense indirectly. This is the unconscious beginning to assert its priority, gently but persistently drawing your attention away from the surface, concerns that have long occupied your mental landscape. Dreams may become more vivid, though their meaning remains tantalizingly elusive. Intuitive flashes dart through your awareness, like fish glimpsed in dark water, there and gone before you can fully grasp their significance. You may find yourself drawn to windows, gazing out at landscapes that suddenly seem charged with meaning you cannot articulate. The quality of light begins to seem different, more significant somehow, as if the world itself is preparing for something. Colors appear more saturated, sounds carry further, and there are moments when the boundary between inner and outer reality becomes mysteriously thin. The approaching alignment announces itself not with fanfare, but with this subtle shift in the texture of experience, like the way dawn begins not with the appearance of sun, but with a gradual lightening that seems to come from everywhere at once. Your psyche, that ancient and wise inhabitant of your inner landscape, has felt the first stirrings of a great tide and begins its work of preparation, loosening your grip on certainties that may need to be released, sensitizing your perception to signals that will soon become crucial, and generating that peculiar atmosphere of expectancy that characterizes all genuine beginnings. This is the whisper before the storm, not the destruction that word might imply, but the storm of transformation, the creative turbulence that precedes every authentic rebirth. The self, that mysterious center of your being that exists beyond the ego's comprehension, has begun to emerge from its long patience, and the first sign of its approach is this quality of pregnant stillness that settles over your inner world, like snow before dawn. When sleep finally comes during these threshold times, it carries you not into the familiar territory of personal dreams, but into the vast amphitheater of the collective unconscious, where your individual psyche becomes a stage for dramas that have been playing since humanity first gazed up at stars and wondered about their purpose. The dream world transforms from a private theater into a cosmic arena where archetypal forces gather to prepare you for the great work of becoming who you were always meant to be. Night after night, your dreaming consciousness finds itself wandering through landscapes that feel simultaneously foreign and deeply familiar, as if you are remembering places you visited long before your current incarnation began. These are not the confused fragments of daily processing that characterize ordinary sleep, but vivid, coherent narratives that carry the weight and texture of lived experience, dreams so real that upon waking, you must convince yourself they were not memories from some other life. The symbols that populate these nocturnal journeys arrive with an insistence that cannot be ignored. Bridges appear repeatedly, ancient stone spans crossing misty chasms, modern steel structures reaching toward distant shores, rope bridges swaying over rushing waters that sing with voices you almost recognize. Each bridge carries the same essential message. A crossing is coming, a movement from one state of being to another, and your unconscious mind is rehearsing the passage, familiarizing you with the courage required to leave familiar ground behind. Doors manifest in endless variations throughout your sleeping hours. Sometimes they are grand and ornate, carved with symbols that seem to shift and change when you try to focus on them directly. Other times they are simple wooden portals weathered by time and use, standing alone in empty fields or at the end of corridors that stretch beyond sight. The doors are always slightly ajar, offering glimpses of light or shadow beyond, and always you sense that what lies on the other side is not just a different place, but a different version of yourself. Keys appear in your hands without explanation, ancient bronze keys warm with mysterious heat, modern keys that fit no lock you recognize, skeleton keys that seem to promise access to chambers you didn't know existed. Sometimes you use them, sometimes you simply hold them, feeling their weight as a reminder that you carry within yourself the means to unlock whatever doors your transformation requires. Water flows through your dream landscapes like a recurring theme in an eternal symphony. Sometimes it appears as a gentle stream, clear and inviting, speaking in liquid whispers of renewal and cleansing. Other times it manifests as a vast ocean, its surface reflecting skies you have never seen but that feel like home. Occasionally it arrives as rain, washing away structures in your dreamscape that upon waking you realize represented outdated aspects of your identity that were ready to dissolve. The collective unconscious begins to bleed through the membranes of personal experience, bringing with it figures that belong not to your individual history, but to humanity's shared mythological inheritance. You may find yourself in conversation with wise women whose faces shift between grandmother, teacher, and priestess, their words carrying authority that bypasses rational analysis and speaks directly to your soul. Or you might encounter the eternal masculine in the form of guides, kings, or warriors who offer not conquest, but protection for the vulnerable parts of yourself that must be honored during transformation. Animals appear as messengers from deeper wisdom traditions. The owl speaks of seeing clearly in darkness, of trusting perception that goes beyond ordinary sight. The wolf reminds you of the pack instinct, the importance of belonging, but also of the lone journey that sometimes must be undertaken before true community becomes possible. The butterfly dances through your dreams as living proof that radical metamorphosis is not only possible, but natural, that what appears to be death is often just transformation, wearing its most convincing disguise. Sacred spaces manifest repeatedly in your nocturnal journeys, ancient temples with columns that seem to reach into starless skies, circular groves where moonlight pools like liquid silver, cathedral-like caves that echo with sounds that might be chanting or might be the earth itself humming with life. In these spaces, you often find yourself participating in ceremonies whose meaning you cannot grasp intellectually, but which resonate in your bones with the recognition of something essential and true. The dreams of this period carry an urgency different from ordinary sleep visions. They demand to be remembered, lingering in your consciousness long after waking, their images surfacing at unexpected moments throughout your day like bubbles rising from deep water. You may find yourself reaching for a notebook upon waking, driven by an inexplicable certainty that these nocturnal messages contain navigation instructions for the journey ahead. Sometimes you wake from these dreams with tears on your cheeks, though you cannot say whether they are tears of grief or joy. The dreams seem to be preparing you for both, for the necessary deaths that transformation requires and for the births that follow. Your unconscious mind, that ancient and patient teacher, is offering you a preview of the mythic dimensions of your personal journey, showing you that what feels like individual crisis is actually participation in the eternal human story of death, rebirth, and renewal. This is the dreaming preparation, the unconscious mind's way of expanding your sense of what is possible, of introducing you to the archetypal energies that will guide and support your alignment when the time comes to step fully into your destined path. As your inner world begins its preparation through dream and symbol, the outer world responds with its own mysterious choreography, weaving meaningful coincidences into the fabric of your daily experience with an artistry so subtle and precise that rational mind struggles to dismiss it as mere chance. This is synchronicity in its purest form, not the casual coincidences that pepper ordinary life, but the profound alignments that occur when the unconscious begins to collaborate actively with the world of manifest reality. The universe, it seems, has been listening to your silent prayers, your wordless longings, the questions you didn't even know you were asking. Now it begins to respond through the language it knows best, the poetry of perfect timing, the grammar of meaningful encounter, the syntax of signs that appear exactly when your soul is ready to receive them. What emerges is a conversation between your deepest self and the living intelligence that orchestrates all things, conducted through the medium of everyday events that carry extraordinary significance. Books fall open to passages that speak directly to your current inner condition, as if some invisible librarian has been cataloging your psychic needs and arranging these literary encounters with supernatural precision. The words you encounter seem to have been written specifically for this moment in your journey, addressing questions you've carried in silence, offering perspective on struggles you thought were uniquely yours, providing exactly the insight or comfort or challenge your soul requires to take its next evolutionary step. Numbers begin to follow you with playful persistence, sequences that catch your eye on clocks, receipts, license plates, and street addresses with frequency that stretches the boundaries of statistical probability. These numerical ambassadors carry their own energetic signature, their repeated appearance serving as a kind of cosmic punctuation, marking moments of significance, confirming inner knowings, reminding you that you are being guided, even when guidance is not immediately apparent to your rational mind. Strangers become unwitting oracles, speaking precisely the words you most need to hear at precisely the moment you are ready to receive them. A casual comment from a cashier echoes the phrase that has been circulating through your thoughts for days. A snippet of conversation overheard while walking past a cafe addresses the very dilemma you've been wrestling with in private. An elderly person sitting beside you on public transport shares a story that perfectly mirrors your current situation, offering resolution or perspective with the timing of divine intervention. Nature herself becomes a willing conspirator in these meaningful arrangements. Birds appear at windows during moments of crucial decision-making, their presence feeling less like coincidence than like scheduled appointment with guidance. Weather patterns shift dramatically during significant emotional processes, as if the sky is providing atmospheric accompaniment to your inner climate. Flowers bloom unseasonably in your garden, or animals cross your path in ways that feel laden with symbolic meaning too precise to ignore. Music becomes a medium through which the universe speaks directly to your condition. The radio plays exactly the song you need to hear when you turn it on, its lyrics addressing your situation with uncanny accuracy. Playlists shuffle to bring forward melodies that match your emotional state or carry messages that feel personally delivered. Even overheard music in elevators or waiting rooms seems to have been curated specifically for your ears, creating a soundtrack for your transformation that appears to be orchestrated by some invisible conductor. Financial resources appear exactly when needed, but not before, as if the universe is teaching you to trust divine timing while providing proof that your material needs are being monitored and met by an intelligence that understands the precise relationship between provision and readiness. Unexpected refunds arrive, forgotten debts are repaid, or opportunities for income present themselves at the exact moment your reserves reach critical levels. People from your past resurface at precisely the right moment to offer closure, healing, or new perspective on old patterns. Former friends reappear to help you see how much you've grown. Past relationships circle back to provide opportunities for forgiveness or understanding that couldn't occur when you were less developed. Even difficult encounters from previous chapters of your life may reappear, but now you engage them from a place of greater wisdom and strength. Technology participates in these meaningful coincidences with digital age sophistication. Emails arrive at perfect moments containing exactly the information or opportunity you've been seeking. Social media algorithms seem to conspire in your favor, surfacing content that speaks directly to your current growth edge. Even technical malfunctions occur with meaningful timing, forcing you to slow down, take different routes, or engage with unexpected people who turn out to carry important messages. The cumulative effect of these synchronistic events creates an atmosphere of being held, guided, and supported by an intelligence far greater than your individual consciousness. Each meaningful coincidence serves as both confirmation that you are on the right path and encouragement to trust the process even when the destination remains unclear. The universe reveals itself as not random but purposeful, not indifferent but intimately invested in your growth and alignment. This is the language of synchronicity, the universe's way of confirming that what is stirring within you is recognized and supported by the mysterious intelligence that orchestrates all things toward their highest expression. The meaningful coincidences that cluster around you now are breadcrumbs leading toward your destined path, evidence that your transformation is not a solitary endeavor, but a collaborative dance between your awakening consciousness and the living wisdom of existence itself. Just as the universe begins its supportive choreography and your unconscious mind prepares the stage for transformation, the ego, that faithful guardian of your familiar identity, awakens to the approaching threat to its carefully constructed kingdom. Like a skilled general sensing enemy movement on the horizon, the ego marshals its most sophisticated defenses, deploying strategies refined through years of protecting you from the unknown, the uncertain, and the potentially overwhelming. This resistance does not announce itself with obvious rebellion. The ego is far too intelligent for such crude tactics. Instead, it operates like a master of psychological warfare, using your own deepest fears and most reasonable concerns as weapons against the very transformation your soul is orchestrating. It speaks in your own voice, using your own logic, presenting arguments so compelling that you may mistake its protective interference for genuine wisdom. Fear arrives first, but not as the primitive terror of obvious danger. This is fear dressed in the respectable clothing of prudence and common sense. Be reasonable, it whispers. Consider the risks. Think of your responsibilities, your security, your reputation, these dreams and signs you're following. What if they're just wishful thinking? What if you're having some kind of breakdown? What if you're simply romanticizing your dissatisfaction with ordinary life? The ego becomes a master ventriloquist, throwing its voice through every doubt that has ever plagued you, every insecurity you've ever harbored about your worthiness or capability. It reminds you of past failures with surgical precision, resurrecting memories of times when you trusted your intuition and were disappointed, when you followed your heart and encountered pain, when you believed in something larger than yourself and felt abandoned by the very universe that now seems to be calling you forward. Doubt clothes itself in the sophisticated garments of intellectual analysis. The meaningful coincidences that felt so profound begin to appear questionable under the ego's relentless examination. Confirmation bias, it suggests smoothly. Selective attention. You're seeing patterns that aren't really there, finding meaning in random events because you want to believe your life has some special purpose. Isn't it more likely that you're going through a difficult period and your mind is creating these fantasies to cope? The ego deploys your own strengths against you with particular cunning. If you are naturally analytical, it floods you with endless data about why transformation is statistically unlikely to succeed. If you are emotionally sensitive, it amplifies every feeling of uncertainty until they become overwhelming. If you are socially conscious, it reminds you constantly of your obligations to others and how your personal growth might be selfish or disruptive to those who depend on you. Old patterns reassert themselves with desperate intensity, like ancient software programs suddenly activated to override new operating systems that threaten their relevance. You may find yourself reverting to behaviors you thought you had outgrown, seeking comfort in familiar addictions, falling back into relationship dynamics that no longer serve you but feel safer than the unknown territory ahead. The ego orchestrates elaborate forms of self-sabotage that appear to come from external circumstances but are actually generated by your own unconscious resistance to change. Job interviews. Job go poorly when new opportunities arise. Relationships become suddenly complicated when you're on the verge of authentic connection. Health issues flare up precisely when you're gathering courage to make important changes. Technology fails at crucial moments when you're about to take significant action. This internal saboteur is particularly skilled at creating conflicts and crises that seem to require your immediate attention, diverting your energy from the transformation process. Family emergencies arise, financial problems demand urgent solution, or interpersonal dramas explode exactly when you're beginning to gain momentum toward your aligned path. These are not necessarily fabricated crises, but the ego's timing in highlighting them serves its protective agenda perfectly. The ego also weaponizes your spiritual growth against itself, creating what Jung called the spiritual bypassing phenomenon. It may suddenly fill you with grandiose fantasies about your destiny, inflating your sense of importance to dangerous levels. Or conversely, it may induce episodes of spiritual despair where you question whether any of this inner work has any value at all. Both extremes serve to derail the steady, grounded progress that genuine transformation requires. Perhaps most insidiously, the ego may attempt to co-opt your transformation process, turning it into another project for personal improvement, rather than genuine surrender to your deeper nature. It offers to manage your spiritual growth, to create timelines and goals for your enlightenment, to measure your progress against external standards, anything to maintain its position as director of your experience rather than allowing the self to emerge in its own timing and manner. Yet even as you recognize these sophisticated defense mechanisms, it is crucial to understand that the ego's resistance is not malevolent. This internal guardian has served you faithfully for years, protecting you from experiences you were not ready to handle, maintaining stability when stability was what you most needed, helping you function in a world that often rewards conformity and predictability over authentic self-expression. The ego's final resistance is actually a form of love, the love of a parent reluctant to let a grown child leave home, the love of a faithful guard dog barking at visitors it doesn't recognize. This resistance serves the profound purpose of ensuring that your transformation is genuine rather than impulsive, that you are truly ready for the responsibilities that alignment will bring, and that you have integrated enough wisdom to navigate the challenges of living authentically in a world that may not immediately understand or support your evolved perspective. This is the ego's last stand before surrender, the final test that confirms your readiness to step fully into who you are becoming. In the midst of this cosmic choreography between synchronistic support and ego resistance, a deeper calling emerges, an irresistible pull toward solitude that arrives with the authority of ancient wisdom. Like the hermit in the tarot deck, ascending the mountain with lantern held high, you feel summoned to withdraw from the noise and demands of external existence, sensing that some essential preparation must happen in the sacred chamber of your own company before you can emerge into your transformed life. This is not the antisocial withdrawal of depression or the avoidance patterns of overwhelm, but a conscious pilgrimage into the depths of your own being, guided by an inner knowing that recognizes this solitude as necessary sanctuary. The external world, with all its voices and opinions, its urgent demands and endless distractions, begins to feel like static interference, preventing you from hearing the subtle frequencies of your own soul's guidance. You find yourself declining invitations that once would have interested you, not from lack of love for friends and family, but from a deeper recognition that your attention is needed elsewhere, in the quiet spaces where transformation does its most delicate work. Social gatherings that previously energized you now feel draining, as if your psyche is conserving energy for the monumental task of restructuring itself from the inside out. The hermit's journey is never about abandoning the world permanently, but about gathering the scattered fragments of yourself that have been dispersed across countless interactions, obligations, and external expectations. In solitude, these fragments can return home to their source, allowing you to remember who you are beneath the layers of social conditioning, professional identity, and relationship dynamics that have shaped your external presentation. This withdrawal often begins gradually, like the tide drawing back before a great wave. You may find yourself spending longer periods in meditation or contemplation, drawn to practices that were once difficult to maintain, but now feel as necessary as breathing. Reading becomes less about entertainment or education, and more about communion with wisdom teachings that speak directly to your current condition. Walking alone in nature transforms from exercise into pilgrimage, each step a prayer, each breath a conversation with the intelligence that moves through all living things. The hermit phase brings with it a quality of listening that penetrates deeper than ordinary hearing. In the silence, you begin to distinguish between the voice of fear and the voice of wisdom, between the chatter of mental conditioning and the quiet certainty of intuitive knowing. This discernment can only develop in environments free from external interpretation and influence, where your own inner guidance can emerge without competition from other people's projections and expectations. Sleep patterns may shift during this hermit period, as if your circadian rhythms are being reset by the same mysterious intelligence orchestrating your transformation. You might find yourself naturally waking at dawn, drawn to witness the daily miracle of light returning to the world, sensing in this cosmic rhythm a reflection of your own process of emergence from darkness into illumination. Or perhaps you become a creature of the night hours, finding in the stillness after midnight a quality of silence that allows the deepest truths to surface. Dreams during this period often feature imagery of caves, monasteries, libraries, and other sacred spaces of solitude. You may find yourself in nocturnal conversations with wise figures who speak of patience, timing, and the necessity of inner preparation before outer manifestation. These dreams carry the quality of initiation, as if your unconscious mind is being prepared for responsibilities and awareness that your conscious self is not yet ready to fully comprehend. The hermit's withdrawal is also a process of metabolizing all the growth, insights, and experiences that have brought you to this threshold moment. Like a snake digesting a large meal, your psyche needs time and space to integrate the profound changes that have been occurring beneath the surface of ordinary consciousness. This integration cannot be rushed or forced. It requires the kind of unhurried attention that only solitude can provide. During this period, you may experience moments of profound loneliness alongside moments of equally profound connection to something vast and benevolent. The loneliness is not a sign that you are doing something wrong, but evidence that you are releasing dependencies on external validation and learning to find wholeness within your own being. The connection reveals itself as recognition that solitude, paradoxically, opens you to the deepest forms of universal communion. This hermit phase often coincides with a natural pruning of relationships and activities that no longer align with your evolving consciousness, not through drama or conflict, but through a gentle falling away of connections that were based on who you used to be rather than who you are becoming. Some relationships may deepen during this time as they prove capable of honoring your need for space and transformation, while others may naturally dissolve as their purpose in your journey completes itself. The hermit's lantern, that symbol of inner illumination that guides the solitary journey, represents the growing clarity about your authentic nature that emerges through sustained self-communion. In the quiet hours of withdrawal, insights surface that could never penetrate the busyness of social interaction. solutions to long-standing problems appear with startling simplicity. Creative inspiration flows like water from a spring that has been waiting for the right conditions to emerge. This is not exile, but pilgrimage, not abandonment of the world, but preparation to engage it from a place of centered authenticity. The hermit withdraws not because the world is evil, but because the world is so beautiful, so complex, so full of potential for both service and distraction, that clarity about one's genuine purpose must be achieved in solitude before that purpose can be lived authentically in community. The hermit's last watch is the final preparation before emergence, the sacred pause before stepping into the fullness of who you were always meant to become. As you dwell in this hermit's sanctuary of solitude, something unexpected begins to happen. The past, which you thought had been processed and integrated, begins to surface like bodies rising from the depths after winter's ice breaks upon a lake. Old wounds that you believed had healed reveal themselves to have been merely dormant, waiting for this moment of approaching transformation to demand their final resolution. The psyche, in its infinite wisdom and perfect timing, brings forward every unhealed fragment that might interfere with your complete alignment, offering you one last sacred opportunity to make peace with all the versions of yourself you have been. This is not punishment or regression, though the ego may interpret it as such. This is the soul's way of ensuring that no shadow remains unintegrated, no pain unprocessed, no lesson unlearned as you prepare to step into the full radiance of who you are becoming. Like a master craftsman examining a precious instrument, before its debut performance, your unconscious mind is identifying and healing any remaining dissonance that could interfere with your ability to play the beautiful music of your authentic life. The wounds that resurface during this period often arrive with startling vividness, as if they occurred yesterday rather than years or decades ago. Childhood hurts that you thought had lost their power suddenly ache with fresh intensity. Betrayals you believed you had forgiven reveal layers of grief that were never fully felt. Losses you processed intellectually now demand to be experienced emotionally, with all the tears and rage and bewilderment that were suppressed when the original trauma occurred. Old relationships may reappear in your life, either literally through unexpected contact or psychically through dreams, memories, and emotional echoes that seem to come from nowhere. Former friends, past lovers, estranged family members, or colleagues from previous chapters of your journey suddenly occupy your thoughts with persistent intensity. These are not random visitations, but purposeful opportunities for healing, forgiveness, or completion that your soul recognizes as necessary for your full liberation. The patterns you thought you had transcended reassert themselves with surprising force, like dormant seeds sprouting after years of lying silent in the soil of your psyche. Old habits of thinking that once plagued you return with familiar persistence. Emotional reactions you believed you had outgrown surface with their original intensity. Relationship dynamics you were certain you had evolved beyond replay themselves with different actors but identical emotional signatures. This can be one of the most discouraging aspects of the pre-alignment period, as it may feel like you are moving backward rather than forward, regressing rather than growing. The ego, always ready to interpret setbacks as evidence of failure, may whisper that all your inner work has been meaningless, that you are fundamentally incapable of real change, that the transformation you sense approaching is just another delusion. Yet this resurgence of old material serves a profound purpose in the alchemy of becoming. Each wound that surfaces is like a bubble of poison rising from an infected wound, painful in the moment of emergence, but essential for true healing. The patterns that reassert themselves are not evidence of your inability to change, but final opportunities to choose differently, to respond from your evolved consciousness rather than your historical conditioning. The shadow aspects of your personality, those parts of yourself you have denied, rejected, or tried to improve away, demand acknowledgement and integration during this phase. The anger you never allowed yourself to feel, the selfishness you always suppressed, the weakness you constantly tried to overcome, the parts of yourself that embarrass or frighten you, all rise to the surface like cream separating from milk, impossible to ignore any longer. This shadow work is perhaps the most challenging aspect of pre-alignment processing because it requires you to embrace and love the very aspects of yourself that you have spent years trying to eliminate. It asks you to find compassion for your human imperfections, to recognize that wholeness includes rather than excludes your darkness, and to understand that authentic power comes not from being perfect, but from being complete. Family patterns that seem to have no relevance to your current life suddenly reveal their ongoing influence. Ancestral wounds that you never knew you carried begin to express themselves through your emotions, your relationships, your career choices, your relationship with money, power, or intimacy. You may find yourself healing not only your own pain, but the unresolved trauma of generations, as if your individual transformation is serving a larger purpose of ancestral healing. Physical symptoms may accompany this emotional archaeology as trauma that has been stored in cellular memory begins to release. Old injuries may flare up, chronic conditions may intensify, or new physical challenges may emerge as your body participates in the process of clearing everything that cannot come with you into your aligned life. The body, that faithful keeper of all experience, cooperates with the psyche's healing agenda by bringing stored pain to consciousness, where it can finally be processed and released. This phase often feels like being caught in an emotional washing machine, tumbled and churned by forces beyond your control. Yet within this apparent chaos lies a profound order, the order of a system clearing itself of everything that is not essential, not authentic, not in harmony with the frequency of your true nature. Every wound that surfaces is a gift from your soul to your personality, an opportunity to heal what was broken, integrate what was rejected, and forgive what was unforgivable. The resurrection of old wounds is not evidence that your healing has failed, but proof that your healing is finally complete enough to handle the full truth of your experience. This is the shadow's final offering, the darkness's last gift before it transforms into the rich soil from which your authentic self can finally bloom in full splendor. As the deep work of integration continues, your entire energetic field begins to vibrate at a frequency that feels simultaneously foreign and familiar, like remembering a song you knew before you were born. This is the energy of anticipation, not the nervous excitement of awaiting some external event, but the profound cellular recognition that your very essence is preparing to incarnate more fully into physical reality than ever before. Your body becomes a tuning fork struck by invisible forces, humming with frequencies that seem to originate from dimensions beyond ordinary perception. You may experience unusual surges of creative energy that arrive without warning, flooding your consciousness with ideas, inspirations, and visions that feel like downloads from some cosmic creative source. These bursts of inspiration often come with such intensity that you struggle to capture them fast enough, as if your human apparatus is being upgraded to channel higher voltages of creative electricity. Sleep becomes a strange and inconsistent companion during this energetic transformation. Some nights you lie awake with eyes closed but mind blazingly alert, your consciousness crackling with an energy that makes rest seem impossible. Other nights you fall into deep, dreamless slumbers that feel more like temporary deaths and resurrections than ordinary sleep. Your body seems to be recalibrating its relationship with rest and activity, learning new rhythms that align with the frequencies of your emerging self. Physical sensations that have no medical explanation may course through your system, tingling in your extremities as if electricity is flowing through pathways that previously lay dormant, warmth that seems to generate from your core and radiate outward like a furnace of transformation, or moments of feeling lighter, as if gravity itself has loosened its hold on your cellular structure. These sensations are not symptoms of illness, but evidence of energetic rewiring, your body's participation in the process of becoming a clearer channel for your authentic essence. Your emotional landscape shifts with the unpredictability of weather systems, but unlike the chaotic swings of instability, these changes feel purposeful, as if different aspects of your emotional spectrum are being fine-tuned for greater range and precision. Moments of inexplicable joy bubble up from nowhere, filling you with effervescence that has no obvious cause but feels completely natural. Equally mysterious waves of melancholy may wash over you, not the heavy sadness of depression, but the sweet sorrow of someone preparing to leave home, grieving the familiar even as you anticipate the magnificent. Sudden insights pierce your consciousness like lightning illuminating a landscape you've been traveling in darkness. Questions that have puzzled you for years suddenly reveal their answers with crystalline clarity. Problems that seemed insurmountable dissolve into non-issues as you perceive them from entirely new perspectives. These moments of understanding arrive with such authority and completeness that you wonder how you could have been confused about these matters for so long. Your relationship with time becomes increasingly fluid and mysterious. Hours can pass in what feels like minutes when you're engaged in activities that align with your emerging purpose, while minutes can stretch like hours when you're forced to participate in pursuits that no longer match your frequency. You may find yourself living increasingly in the present moment, not through spiritual discipline, but through natural inclination, as if your consciousness is being drawn away from past and future into the eternal now, where transformation actually occurs. Attention becomes both more scattered and more focused simultaneously, a paradox that perfectly captures the nature of consciousness, preparing for a quantum shift. Your mind may flit from subject to subject with butterfly-like unpredictability, yet when something truly important captures your focus, you can concentrate with laser-like intensity that surprises even you. It's as if your psychic energy is being redistributed, withdrawing from matters of lesser importance to become available for what truly matters. Your nervous system may feel simultaneously overstimulated and more resilient than before. Sounds seem louder, colors more vivid, textures more intense, as if your sensory apparatus is being sensitized to perceive subtleties that were previously filtered out. Yet paradoxically, you may also find yourself more capable of remaining calm in situations that would have previously overwhelmed you, as if your increased sensitivity comes with corresponding increases in your capacity to process intense experience. Appetite patterns shift in ways that reflect your changing relationship with physical embodiment. You may find yourself craving foods you've never been interested in, or losing taste for foods that once pleased you. Your body seems to be developing its own intelligence about what it needs to support the transformation process, requesting specific nutrients or rejecting substances that would interfere with your energetic recalibration. The energy of anticipation creates a unique relationship with planning and control. Your rational mind may attempt to create timelines and strategies for your transformation, yet you increasingly recognize that this process is being orchestrated by an intelligence far more sophisticated than your personality could ever devise. This recognition creates a dynamic tension between your need to participate consciously in your own becoming and your growing awareness that you must ultimately surrender to forces beyond your comprehension. This energetic preparation is like the charging of a battery before it powers some magnificent device. Your entire system is being upgraded to handle the voltage of your true nature, strengthened to channel the creative forces that will flow through you when you step fully into alignment. Every surge of energy, every sleepless night, every moment of inexplicable vitality is evidence that something unprecedented is preparing to be born through the vessel of your transformed consciousness. The energy of anticipation is your soul's way of preparing for its grand debut. The final tuning before the orchestra of your authentic life begins to play its destined symphony. As your inner systems complete their mysterious preparations, the outer structures of your life begin their own process of dissolution, not through catastrophe or failure, but through the natural entropy that occurs when forms are no longer aligned with the energy they were meant to contain. Relationships that have been sustained by habit rather than authentic connection start to reveal their fundamental incompatibility. Career paths that once provided security but never sparked genuine passion begin to feel like elaborate prisons. Living situations that served your previous version of self become increasingly uncomfortable, like clothing that no longer fits your transformed body. This dissolution often begins subtly, with small frictions and dissatisfactions that gradually accumulate until they can no longer be ignored or rationalized away. The job that once felt tolerable becomes soul-crushingly meaningless. The relationship that functioned adequately when you were less aware of your authentic needs now feels like a betrayal of your true nature. The social circles that provided belonging when you were seeking external validation now feel hollow and performative. What might appear to external observers as a series of unfortunate circumstances, the end of relationships, career changes, relocations, financial disruptions, is actually the universe's compassionate way of clearing space for what authentically belongs in your aligned life. Like a gardener ruthlessly pruning a plant to encourage healthy new growth, existence itself removes from your experience whatever would limit or constrain your full flowering. The dissolution of false structures can be one of the most frightening aspects of approaching alignment, because it often occurs before the new forms have fully manifested. You may find yourself in periods of apparent emptiness, where old securities have fallen away but new ones have not yet crystallized. This liminal space between what was and what will be requires enormous trust in the intelligence orchestrating your transformation. Relationships bear the brunt of this structural dissolution because they so often serve as mirrors for our level of self-awareness and authentic expression. Partnerships that were based on mutual unconsciousness, where both people enabled each other's avoidance of growth, naturally become untenable as one partner begins to awaken. Friendships built around shared complaints, addictions, or limitations lose their foundation when you no longer need these coping mechanisms. The ending of relationships during this phase is rarely dramatic or conflictual, though it may be deeply saddening. More often, there is simply a growing recognition that you are traveling in different directions, that your paths, which once ran parallel, are now diverging toward different destinations. Love may remain, but compatibility disappears as you become incompatible with your former self and, by extension, with those who were attracted to or comfortable with that previous version. Career dissolution often manifests as a gradual loss of motivation and engagement with work that once felt adequate or even fulfilling. The promotion you once would have pursued with enthusiasm now feels like a golden prison. The industry you once navigated successfully begins to feel toxic, to your evolving sensibilities. Skills that once defined your professional identity may feel like outdated software that no longer runs on your upgraded operating system. Financial structures may shift dramatically as your relationship with security and abundance transforms. Old patterns around money, whether based on scarcity consciousness or material attachment, often become unsustainable as your values realign with your authentic nature. You may find yourself willing to accept temporary financial uncertainty in exchange for work that honors your soul, or discovering that your previous financial concerns were based on fears rather than genuine needs. Living situations frequently change during this dissolution phase, as your evolving energy requires different physical environments for optimal expression. The apartment that felt cozy when you were seeking security may feel cramped when you need space for creative expression. The city that provided stimulation during your growth phase may feel overwhelming when you're ready for deeper contemplation. The rural setting that once felt peaceful may feel isolating when you're prepared for greater community engagement. Even your relationship with possessions transforms as you naturally release attachment to objects that no longer reflect your authentic self. Clothes that once expressed your personality now hang unworn in closets. Books that once inspired you gather dust as your interests evolve. Decorative objects that once brought pleasure now feel like clutter interfering with the clean energy you're cultivating. The dissolution of false structures is often accompanied by a profound sense of grief, not just for what is being lost, but for the time and energy invested in building and maintaining forms that were ultimately incompatible with your true nature. This grief is sacred and necessary, honoring the part of you that genuinely tried to make those structures work, while simultaneously acknowledging that their time has passed. Yet within this apparent destruction lies the seeds of profound liberation. Each structure that falls away creates space for something more authentic to emerge. Each relationship that ends opens the possibility for connections based on genuine compatibility rather than convenience or habit. Each career dissolution clears the path for work that utilizes your actual gifts and serves your real purpose. This is the cosmic serpent shedding its skin, a process that appears destructive from the outside, but is actually the natural prerequisite for growth. The old forms must be released, not because they were wrong, but because they were outgrown. What once provided appropriate containers for your expanding consciousness now constrains it, and the intelligent force of your evolution naturally dismantles whatever would limit your continued becoming. The collapse of false structures is not punishment but preparation, not failure but liberation from forms that were always temporary scaffolding for the magnificent building of your authentic life that was always meant to emerge. In the deepening twilight of your transformation, when the old certainties have dissolved like morning mist and the new world has not yet crystallized into form, something extraordinary begins to occur. The veil between what was and what will be grows gossamer thin, and through its delicate weave, whispers reach you, not from the external world with its clamorous demands and endless distractions, but from a source far more intimate and infinitely more wise. These are not the messages your rational mind expects, arriving with fanfare and dramatic proclamation. No, they come as Jung himself described the voice of the self, quiet, persistent, carrying the unmistakable resonance of truth that needs no external validation. They slip into your awareness like memories that haven't happened yet, like dreams that taste more real than waking life, like sudden knowings that settle into your bones with the weight of ancient remembrance. You begin to notice them first in the spaces between thoughts, in that pregnant pause between exhale and inhale, in the moment when sleep releases its hold, but consciousness has not yet fully claimed you. a flash of certainty about a decision you haven't yet made, a vision of yourself moving through a world that feels simultaneously foreign and familiar, a sense of completion surrounding something that, in your current reality, remains achingly unfinished. At first, the ego mind, ever vigilant guardian of the known and measurable, attempts to dismiss these visitations as wishful thinking, as projections of desire onto the blank canvas of an uncertain future. But there is something about these moments, a quality of presence, a texture of inevitability that bypasses the mind's skeptical filters and speaks directly to that deeper knowing Jung called the wisdom of the psyche. You begin to understand that what you are receiving are not predictions in the conventional sense, but transmissions from the self you are in the process of becoming. Across the apparent linearity of time, your future integrated consciousness reaches back through the mysterious corridors of the collective unconscious to offer guidance, reassurance, and most importantly, the unshakable knowing that this journey, however dark and uncertain it may feel, is leading you exactly where you need to go. These messages arrive clothed in the language of symbol and synchronicity, speaking the ancient tongue that predates rational thought. Perhaps it is the way a particular quality of light falls across your path at precisely the moment you are wrestling with a decision, and suddenly you know, not think, but know, which direction to take. Perhaps it is the way a fragment of conversation overheard on the street addresses exactly the question your soul has been asking, delivered with such perfect timing that coincidence becomes impossible to believe. Sometimes the guidance comes through what Jung recognized as the transcendent function, those moments when opposing forces within the psyche suddenly resolve into a third way, a solution that encompasses and transforms the original conflict. You find yourself knowing how to hold both your need for security and your calling toward risk, how to honor both your individual journey and your connections to others, how to embrace both the dying of who you were and the birthing of who you are becoming. The messages carry with them a quality of timelessness that speaks to the eternal dimension of the self. They remind you that beneath the surface drama of personal transformation lies a deeper current, the individuation process that Jung identified as the fundamental drive of the psyche toward wholeness. Your future self, speaking from that place of achieved integration, offers the perspective of one who has already walked the path you are now traversing. What feels like uncertainty these transmissions seem to whisper is actually the sacred space between forms, the creative void where new worlds are born. What appears as chaos is the necessary dissolution that precedes reorganization at a higher level. What seems like loss is the stripping away all that is not essentially you, revealing the indestructible core of your authentic being. You begin to sense that time itself is far more fluid than the linear progression you once believed it to be. Past, present, and future exist simultaneously in the eternal now of the unconscious, and from that vantage point, your future self can offer guidance because in some very real sense, that future already exists in potential, waiting to be actualized through your conscious participation in the process of becoming. The quality of these messages shifts as your receptivity deepens. Where once they arrived as brief flashes of intuition, they now begin to take on the character of ongoing dialogue. You sense the presence of your integrated self as a wise companion, walking alongside you through the labyrinth of transformation, offering not answers but the kind of questions that unlock deeper wisdom within you. Trust the process, this inner voice seems to say, though not in words, but in a quality of presence that permeates your being. What you are seeking is also seeking you. The path that seems so unclear is actually revealing itself with each step you take. You are not lost. You are being led. though the destination may be unlike anything your current self can imagine. As you learn to receive these transmissions with greater openness, you begin to understand that they are not coming from some external source, but from the deepest dimension of your own being, that place Jung called the self, which exists both within you and far beyond the boundaries of your personal identity. Your future self is not separate from who you are now. It is who you are now, viewed from the perspective of integration rather than fragmentation, wholeness rather than division. The messages begin to carry practical guidance as well as spiritual comfort. You find yourself knowing which opportunities to accept and which to decline, which relationships serve your highest development, and which keep you trapped in outdated patterns. This knowing doesn't come from analysis or calculation, but from a deeper attunement to the flow of your own becoming. And perhaps most remarkably, you begin to sense that you yourself are already sending messages backward through time to your past self, that the you who struggled in earlier phases of this journey was also receiving guidance from the consciousness you have now achieved. The linear progression of cause and effect gives way to a more mysterious understanding of how healing and transformation ripple both forward and backward through the fabric of existence. These messages from your future self become anchors of hope in the storm of transformation, reminders that what feels like disintegration is actually the necessary prelude to a higher form of integration. They whisper the ultimate truth that Jung spent his lifetime exploring, that the seemingly chaotic process of psychological death and rebirth is actually the most natural thing in the world, as ordained and inevitable as the changing of the seasons, the cycling of the moon, the eternal return of spring after winter's deepest darkness. Here, in this moment that stretches beyond measurement, you find yourself suspended between worlds, like a figure caught in amber held in perfect stillness while the universe itself seems to draw breath. This is not the restless waiting of anticipation, nor the anxious hovering of uncertainty, but something far more profound, a pause so complete, so saturated with presence that it transforms from emptiness into fullness, from void into sacred vessel. Jung spoke of moments when the ego's relentless forward motion ceases, when the psyche enters what he called a state of holding the tension. You have arrived at such a moment, the psychological equivalent of the solstice, when the wheel of becoming pauses at its furthest point before turning toward new direction. Time itself becomes your ally rather than your enemy, offering not the pressure of urgency but the gift of complete presence. In this threshold space, the normal rules of existence seem suspended. Past and future lose their grip on consciousness, revealing themselves as constructs of the linear mind rather than absolute realities. What emerges in their absence is the eternal now, not as philosophical concept, but as lived experience, a quality of being so immediate and complete that it needs nothing added to make it whole. You stand like the figure in the Hanged Man card of the ancient tarot, suspended between heaven and earth, neither fully of one realm nor the other. But rather than experiencing this as torment, you begin to recognize it as initiation. This pause is not punishment for indecision, but preparation for transformation at a depth you could never have imagined while caught in the momentum of your former life. The old world, with its familiar patterns, comfortable limitations, and well-worn paths, has not yet fully released you. Its gravitational pull still tugs at the edges of your consciousness, whispering seductive promises of return to the known. Meanwhile, the new world that calls to your soul remains translucent, more feeling than form, more vision than reality. And here you are, poised between them both, belonging fully to neither yet touched by each. This is the mystery Jung recognized in his study of the individuation process, those pregnant moments when the psyche gathers itself for quantum leaps in development. Like the chrysalis that appears to be doing nothing, while containing the most radical transformation in nature, this pause is not empty space, but concentrated becoming. Every cell of your being is reorganizing itself according to a blueprint, written in the language of your authentic self. You begin to understand that this suspension is not accidental but absolutely necessary. The ego mind, with its preference for action and resolution, would rush headlong into the future, carrying the unprocessed debris of the past like invisible baggage. But the deeper intelligence of the psyche knows better. It creates these sacred pauses as spaces for integration, for the alchemical process that transmutes experience into wisdom, wounds into strength, confusion into clarity. In this eternal moment, you taste the paradox that mystics have always known, that true power often looks like stillness, that the greatest action sometimes takes the form of perfect non-action. You are not stuck. You are suspended in a state of dynamic equilibrium, like a mountain lake that reflects the sky with such pristine clarity because its surface remains undisturbed by the urgency to be elsewhere. The pause reveals itself as a portal into presence itself. Without the forward momentum of becoming or the backward pull of memory, consciousness settles into its natural state, vast, open, aware. You discover that you are not a person having a spiritual experience, but spirit itself, temporarily forgetting its true nature through identification with form, circumstance, and story. Here, in this liminal space, the artificial boundaries between sacred and mundane dissolve. Every breath becomes a prayer, every heartbeat a meditation, every moment of awareness, a direct transmission from the source of all being. You realize that you have been searching for enlightenment in distant futures and exotic locations when it was always available in the simple act of being fully present to what is. The sacred pause teaches you the difference between chronological time, the relentless tick of clocks and calendars, and kairos, the Greek's word for time that is pregnant with meaning, saturated with significance. In Chronos, this might appear as a period of stagnation, of being stuck between chapters of your life story. But in Kairos, it reveals itself as the most important chapter of all, the one in which you learn to be rather than merely to do. Jung understood that the psyche operates according to principles that often contradict the ego's understanding of progress and development. What appears as regression might actually be necessary preparation for advancement. What feels like stopping might be the most significant movement of all, not through space, but through dimensions of being that exist within the eternal now. You begin to sense that this pause is not something happening to you, but something you are creating, perhaps at a level deeper than conscious intention. Some wise part of your being has called this time out, recognizing that the next phase of your journey requires not just new actions, but a fundamentally different quality of consciousness. The pause becomes a cocoon of protection around your emerging self, shielding you from premature exposure to forces you are not yet ready to navigate. In this suspension, you discover resources you never knew you possessed. Without the constant stimulation of forward motion, subtle energies that were always present but overshadowed begin to reveal themselves. Intuitive faculties sharpen, the capacity for deep listening expands. The ability to sense the sacred dimension of ordinary experience awakens from its long sleep. The pause also becomes a mirror, reflecting back to you with crystalline clarity the patterns and programs that have been running your life unconsciously. Without the distraction of external activity, you see clearly the internal mechanisms that have been shaping your reality from behind the scenes. This seeing is not judgment but liberation, for what is brought into conscious awareness can be transformed. You realize that every spiritual tradition has recognized the necessity of such pauses. The vision quest of indigenous cultures, the desert retreats of mystics, the dark nights of the soul described by saints and sages. These are not aberrations in the human journey, but essential waypoints, times when the soul withdraws from the world of form to remember its essential nature and gather strength for the next phase of its manifestation. As you surrender more completely to this sacred suspension, you begin to taste the quality of peace that Jung called the peace of God, which passeth all understanding. It is not peace as the absence of challenge, but peace as the presence of deep trust in the process of becoming. You are exactly where you need to be, exactly when you need to be there, held in the loving patience of a universe that operates according to rhythms far more profound than human urgency. The pause becomes your teacher, instructing you in the art of being fully present without agenda, fully alive without attachment to outcome. In learning to inhabit this moment completely, not as a way station to somewhere else, but as destination in itself, you prepare yourself to bring this quality of presence to whatever comes next. For when you finally step forward into your new life, you will carry with you this capacity for sacred pause, this ability to find eternity in any moment, this unshakable knowing that you are always, already, exactly where you belong. And then it happens, not with the gradual lightening of dawn, but with the sudden illumination of lightning splitting the midnight sky. Recognition floods through you like water breaking through a dam that had held back an ocean of knowing for lifetimes. What you have been seeking with such desperate intensity, what you have pursued through endless corridors of becoming, what you have imagined lay somewhere in the distant future, reveals itself to have been here all along, closer than your own breath, more intimate than your own heartbeat. This is not the recognition of something foreign finally making itself known, but the recognition of something so fundamental, so essentially you, that its absence was the only impossibility. Like a person suddenly remembering their own name after amnesia, like an exile finally seeing their homeland after years of wandering, like an actor remembering they are not the character they have been playing, but the consciousness witnessing the performance. This recognition carries with it the unmistakable flavor of homecoming. Jung spoke of moments when the veil between ego and self grows thin enough for truth to penetrate. You have arrived at such a moment when the elaborate construction of who you thought you were suddenly becomes transparent, revealing the luminous being you have always been, beneath the layers of conditioning, beneath the masks of persona, beneath the stories you told yourself about limitation and inadequacy and the need to become someone other than who you are. The path that seemed so elusive, so mysteriously hidden from your desperate searching, reveals itself to have been beneath your feet with every step you have taken. What you mistook for wandering was actually walking the labyrinth of your own becoming, each apparent wrong turn a necessary curve in the spiral that leads to the center, each moment of feeling lost a required passage through the geography of your own transformation. This recognition arrives with a quality of inevitability that makes you wonder how you could ever have missed something so obvious. It is like suddenly seeing the hidden image in a stereogram. One moment there is only chaos and confusion, and the next moment the pattern snaps into perfect clarity, so obvious that it seems impossible it was ever hidden. The seeking energy that has driven you through countless explorations and experiments suddenly has nowhere to go. For what can you seek when you realize you are already that which you have been seeking, your purpose, that elusive calling you have been trying to decipher through meditation and therapy, through books and teachers, through trial and error and endless analysis, does not arrive as a foreign assignment handed down from some external authority. It reveals itself as homecoming, as the simple act of finally being willing to be who you have always been beneath the layers of who you thought you had to become. The personas you have worn, the roles you have played, the versions of yourself you have tried on like ill-fitting clothes. All of these fall away not through rejection but through recognition of their ultimate unnecessariness. Like an actor finally allowed to step out of costume and makeup, you remember the relief of being simply yourself, unadorned by the elaborate productions of the ego's theater. This is what Jung called the realization of the self, not the acquisition of something new, but the uncovering of something eternally present. The gold of your authentic being was never missing. It was simply buried beneath layers of lead, the heavy metal of conditioning, expectation, fear, and the endless effort to be someone other than who you naturally are. You understand now why the old systems of your life had to crumble, why the familiar structures had to dissolve, why you had to wander in the wilderness of unknowing. The false self, however successful it may have appeared, however well it functioned in the world of consensus reality, was like a beautiful prison, keeping you from the direct experience of your own essential nature. Only through its dissolution could the authentic self emerge, not as something created, but as something revealed. The recognition brings with it a profound relaxation, a letting go you did not even know you were holding. The exhausting effort of trying to become dissolves into the simple ease of being. The complicated strategies for self-improvement transform into the elegant simplicity of self-acceptance. The desperate seeking for approval and validation from external sources melts into the unshakable knowing that you are already approved, already validated, already worthy by the simple fact of your existence. This is not the recognition of personal specialness, but of universal belonging. You see clearly now that what makes you unique is not your differences from others, but your willingness to embody the same essential nature that lives at the core of every being. Your individuation, your becoming who you truly are, serves not your ego's agenda for distinction, but life's agenda for fuller expression through infinite forms. The masks you wore were not mistakes but necessary experiments in consciousness. Each persona taught you something valuable about the range of human experience while simultaneously showing you what you are not. Through the process of trying on different identities, you learn to distinguish between the costume and the one wearing it, between the role and the actor, between the wave and the ocean that gives it form. You realize that alignment is not about changing who you are, but about finally becoming willing to be who you have always been. Beneath the conditioning, beneath the fear, beneath the elaborate constructions of the mind that insisted you needed to be fixed, improved, or transformed into something other than your essential nature. This willingness is not passive acceptance, but active choice, not resignation, but celebration. The future you once imagined, filled with achievements and acquisitions, relationships and recognition, transforms into something far simpler and infinitely more satisfying. The future in which you are finally, completely, unapologetically yourself. Not the self the world told you to be, not the self your fears convinced you that you were, but the self that has been quietly waiting behind all the noise for you to finally notice its presence. This recognition carries with it profound implications for how you will now move through the world. Decisions become simpler when filtered through the clarity of authentic being rather than the complexity of strategic thinking. Relationships become more genuine when you no longer need to perform for love, but can offer it from the overflow of self-acceptance. Work becomes more fulfilling when it arises from natural expression rather than external obligation. You see now that what you called your spiritual journey was actually the journey home to yourself, that what you called your healing was actually the removal of everything that was never truly you, that what you called your awakening was actually the remembering of what you never actually forgot, but simply agreed to pretend you had lost. The recognition is complete, undeniable, transformative. You are not becoming someone new. You are finally becoming willing to be who you have always been. The recognition is not of arrival, but of presence, not of achievement, but of being, not of having found yourself, but of never having actually been lost. In this moment of crystalline clarity, the seeker and the sought, the question and the answer, the journey and the destination, reveal themselves to have been one from the very beginning. From the deepest chambers of your being, from the place where individual will merges with cosmic intention, from the sacred marriage of ego and self that Jung recognized as the ultimate goal of individuation, rises the great yes, not whispered but proclaimed, not tentative but absolute, not the small voice of personal preference but the full-throated affirmation of integrated consciousness, finally aligned with its own deepest truth. This is not the yes of compliance, born from fear of disappointment or desperate need for approval. This is not the yes of resignation, spoken from exhaustion or the collapse of resistance. This is the yes that emerges when every aspect of your being, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, masculine and feminine, human and divine, comes into perfect alignment and speaks with one voice, the word that calls your destiny into manifestation. The moment arrives like thunder following lightning, the inevitable consequence of recognition. Having finally seen who you truly are beneath all the constructions of who you thought you had to be, having touched the unshakable core of your authentic being, having recognized the path that was always beneath your feet, you now stand at the ultimate threshold, the moment of conscious participation in your own becoming through the power of complete affirmation. This yes reverberates through every cell of your body, like a tuning fork struck in perfect pitch, aligning your physical form with the frequency of your soul's intention. It echoes through every memory and every dream, transforming the story of your past from a collection of random events into a coherent mythology of preparation. It ripples forward through time itself, reorganizing the field of possibilities around you according to the magnetic pull of authentic being. Jung understood that the psyche operates through what he called the transcendent function, the mysterious capacity to resolve seemingly irreconcilable opposites into a higher synthesis. Your great yes emerges from just such a synthesis, containing within itself the full acceptance of everything you have been, while simultaneously calling forth everything you are becoming. It embraces both your human limitations and your divine potential, both your individual uniqueness and your universal connection. As this yes moves through you, you feel the fundamental reorganization of your relationship to existence itself. Where once you moved through life as petitioner, asking permission, seeking approval, hoping for circumstances to align in your favor, you now step forward as collaborator with the very forces that weave reality from the fabric of possibility. You are no longer victim to circumstance, but conscious participant in creation. The yes carries within it the accumulated wisdom of your entire journey. Every moment of confusion becomes revealed as necessary preparation for clarity. Every experience of loss transforms into space-making for what was meant to come. Every season of struggle shows itself as strength-building for the magnitude of purpose you are now ready to embody. Nothing was wasted. Everything was preparation for this moment of complete affirmation. You understand now that this yes is not something you are speaking to life, but something life has been waiting to speak through you. The mysterious intelligence that orchestrates galaxies in their dance, that guides seeds to become forests, that moves the tides and seasons in their eternal rhythms, has been patiently preparing you to become a conscious channel for its expression. Your individual will has not been conquered, but consecrated. not diminished, but divined. The vibration of your yes begins to reshape the world around you with the inevitability of magnetic attraction. Opportunities that match your authentic frequency begin to appear as if materialized from thin air. Relationships that support your highest expression are drawn into your orbit, while those that no longer serve your evolution gracefully release their hold. Resources, insights, and synchronicities flow toward you like streams converging into a river that knows exactly where it is going. This is what the mystics have always known. That reality is far more malleable than it appears to the uncommitted consciousness. When you speak your yes from the place of authentic being rather than ego-driven wanting, when you align your individual will with the deeper intelligence that moves through all things, you discover that you are not separate from the creative principle, but one of its most sophisticated expressions. The great yes transforms you from seeker into finder, from questioner into answer, from someone trying to figure out their purpose into someone actively living it. The exhausting effort of trying to make things happen gives way to the elegant dance of allowing things to flow through you. You become like a river that has finally found its true course, powerful not through force but through absolute clarity of direction. Every step you take now carries the authority of alignment. Your presence becomes a field of coherence that invites others to remember their own authenticity. Your work becomes not just what you do, but how the universe expresses its creativity through your particular form. Your relationships become sacred collaborations in the mutual awakening of consciousness. The yes continues to reverberate through dimensions of being you are only beginning to understand. It echoes backward through your ancestral line, healing patterns that have been seeking resolution for generations. It ripples forward into the future, laying the energetic foundation for possibilities you cannot yet imagine. It spreads outward through the web of connection that links all beings, adding your note to the symphony of consciousness awakening to itself. You realize that this moment, this great yes, is not the end of your journey, but its true beginning. Everything that came before was preparation for this capacity to live in complete alignment with your deepest truth. Everything that comes after will be the magnificent unfolding of what becomes possible when a human being finally says yes to their own divinity with every fiber of their being. Standing now at the threshold of your aligned life, you understand viscerally what Jung spent his lifetime exploring. That individuation is not the achievement of personal perfection, but the willingness to become who you truly are in service of the greater wholeness, seeking to express itself through infinite forms. Your great yes joins the chorus of all beings who have awakened to their true nature, adding your unique voice to the eternal song of consciousness, celebrating its own magnificent diversity. You step forward not as conqueror but as collaborator, not as separate self-pursuing individual agenda, but as conscious expression of the one life living itself through countless forms. Your yes has become life's yes to itself, and in this perfect alignment, miracles become ordinary, purpose becomes effortless, and the extraordinary life you once imagined reveals itself as the natural consequence of finally being willing to be extraordinary, simply by being completely, authentically, divinely yourself.